We're going to talk about the Star Citizen Live cargoes and hangars Q&A, which is a lot of, I was just looking at the timestamps down here, a lot of questions asking for some clarification regarding how cargo and hangars will work. We also have the dev tracker here to look at some of the clarifications afterward on Spectrum. And of course, that's just my channel, but we'll also have videos, as you know, always. We could do some deep dives into some of the details they talk about. Really, this is just to talk about cargo hauling in general in Star Citizen. Has it killed the game?
The first question is a real easy one. Just a softball over the home plate. In the hangars and cargo SCL 4 months ago, it was said that it just missed the release and that you were really close. What the hell happened?
Okay, I feel like I need to... Wait, where was that video? Is this is a video.
You know, while it is disappointing to see it slip, you know, we are a bit off. We missed the target, but we're not so far off. It's not going to be like, you know, 6 months from now or anything like this. So it's a bit disappointing that it missed the release, but we are really close. So
that was, I'm pretty sure it was almost 6 months actually from that.
Time is relative. No. So a few things on that. First is, when I said that, first off, I do regret using that exact terminology. But
just never give any kind of dates. Like, we're the worst. And by the worst, I mean the best. We always remember the dates. And they just continue to give them to us, and it's just not good fodder.
To be more serious, when I said that, that doesn't mean we're really close to going live, right? So I think that's one thing to consider, is that there's still the whole Avocado PTU live flow that we have to go through, and there's going to be a lead time to getting that out to players, like no matter what. So it wasn't like we were so close to just like pushing the button and being live. I probably could have been clear on that point.
Probably.
But on top of all that, there's a lot of things that happen even still, like, you know, in between like what we would normally go, you know, to live and doing further development. And in particular, some things that like ended up being especially problematic, like going long, was things in particular like ATC and Transit. ATC and Transit were two really critical parts of the whole hangar loop, of course, and the ship loading changes that we did with the ship loading platform. And unfortunately, like, if you could ask me to pick two systems to not touch at all,
ATC and Transit.
It would be ATC and Transit.
Dude, ATC and Transit is awful. Absolutely terrible. Every single time, I'm gonna do a little one of these little things real quick, where we kind of guess a month in a year way back in the day. Okay, I'm gonna go, let's say May of 2022 monthly report. There is a good chance we'll see something about ATC. I didn't put Star Citizen. Something about ATC or Transit in that monthly report, because oh my gosh, it's terrible. Everything I hear about ATC and Transit in this game is awful. It's always causing problems. It's all, let's see. Batch, patch, scratch. Okay, not ATC. And let's see if there was anything Transit-wise. No, transition. So I missed it. Missed the mark. Couldn't do it. There were a lot of things that they've talked about in the past that have to do with ATC and Transit. And like, if you've been following these monthly reports long enough, you've probably seen it yourself. It's just, there's always so much crap going on with these systems in the game. Because of the way that they communicate and work. And here we go. Freaking June of 2022. What did I say? June of 2022. Last month, Vehicle Features worked on a variety of tasks to ready their system for the release of persistent streaming. This involved the ongoing refactor of the transit system. So they can simulate train networks when the carriages aren't spawned in on any machines. Like, it just always is coming up. They also validated Lorville's transit system to ensure it could be modified to fit the new city's layout. It's why I'm so excited about there being a rework to the transit system with server meshing, because it feels like that is one of those things that they have waited so long for an actual full rework of it. Just like a lot of other things like the mission system, until they could just sit down and be like, okay, we're wiping out this whole old system and we're putting in something that actually works. Because golly gee, it's just always coming up.
Because there are two older systems in the game. They're very complicated and they have lots of bugs historically. They're problem children for us as systems. So we knew coming into this that it was going to be a risk making changes to those systems. And what turned out to be, I think, more of a problem than we anticipated is that like once we started getting like wider testing, those systems really buckled underneath load in a way that we weren't really seeing internally. So we would, if anybody was on the PTU, for example, whenever we first started going out, it would be rocky. We put out some fixes, bring in more players, and then the thing would fall over. And as a developer, to make it more frustrating, fall over in a way where not only could we not reproduce it, but our own QA oftentimes couldn't easily reproduce it, or if they could, there wasn't like a coherent understanding about like what the fundamental cause was. So for those kinds of issues, we had to get creative as far as like understanding what was happening and like what to do to address.
I will quiet my own voice because I have boosted the YouTube volume as high as it will possibly go. So you guys can turn up your volume. I'll just turn myself down.
It because again, like we couldn't really consistently or fully understand it. So we put in a lot of diagnostics, a lot of telemetry, try things, and then eventually work towards a conclusion on what the actual fundamental problems were. On top of that, like I think there was kind of a consideration with those systems about, right, we're going to go in here, we're going to make some big changes. We know we have to in order to make all of this hangar stuff work. But these are kind of older systems. Do we rewrite them? Do we, largely refactor them, or do we try to keep them largely intact, but with the smaller changes that we need, hopefully smaller changes that we need to get us out? We wanted to hit the release date sooner. So we made the call that we were not going to largely refactor or rewrite them for this release. In retrospect, I'm not sure, like if I could do it again, I would be interested to know, would it be longer actually if we just decided to just rewrite them or refactor them first? The good news is that we already are planning on doing just that. And in fact, Transit is already in progress with the new version, which needed to happen anyways for server matching and all this stuff. So that's good. And then ATC as well, we already have plans on how to rework it and to make it just fundamentally some of the problems at play here, because ATC as a system is so like centralized and it keeps a lot of state internally in a very centralized place. But these systems are extremely complicated about how they deal with persistence and logging and streaming, and in particular tracking ship allocations in the hangars. So we would get bugs, for example, with like ships doubling up in hangars, et cetera. Like those things were really challenging the system, as well as like the doors not opening. Yeah. So like a lot of that stuff, I think we have a lot better idea about what to do about it as a system in the future. But this release, we made the call to try to, take the system that we had, just kind of like, get it working with the new direction, and then hopefully give us some more time without so much time pressure to make the right adjustments, like more fundamentally. It's a risk we took. It didn't turn out, I think, as we hoped, but sometimes that's how it goes. But there's a lot more things than that. Another thing was the mission system.
Before he continues to move on with that, I do want to say we were just talking about this before we started watching. The idea of stopping development, stopping features, and just working on stability. And this seems like one of those things, the transit system, the ATC system, even the mission system, as he's about to start talking about, these seem like the kind of things that split the gap between new features and stability. If you stop developing new features, then you're forced to stabilize what sounds like a broken system for the game right now, right? Going forward, you would never meet the MMO characteristics because server meshing wouldn't allow the game to expand very much. But if you ever, like a lot of people will say, stop the new features, stabilize the game, release it, and then expand. That would call for them to basically make server meshing after they've stabilized all this stuff. So we would end up running into the same problem again, right? Where these systems, the transit system, the AT system, would not really work that well, and then get to a point where they have to remake them for server meshing anyways. So it's these kinds of systems that I feel like are the things that hold this game back the most, because after they do refactor this stuff, then realistically they should be able to stop adding a ton of stuff. Not to say they ever will. We all know that won't happen. But I feel like these are really important points. The actual underlying systems that run the game, like ATC, transit, missions, heck, even like something like the economy probably, maybe, possibly might fit into this criteria as well.
It's a new mission system with a new delivery hookup for the delivery missions. First outing, right? There's a lot of new shaky things that we found with, in particular, the hookup from the freight elevators to the missions. There's just like a lot of loose ends, a lot of things, threads would get lost. We have this whole warehouse system that has to interact with the mission system. And there's just, again, a lot of these like rare, low repro issues that in these very fundamental places, actually, this is another point for ATC and Transit. Like when you have a moderate inconsistent bug in a system that's not as critical, it doesn't seem as bad. Not to say that, bugs aren't bad. Of course, we want the game to be stable. But whenever you have something that's like, let's say it happens 1% of the time or 0.1% of the time. Unfortunately, if that isn't a part of the game flow,
a critical system.
Critical,
yeah,
it's awful. It's unplayable, right? So we have to like take even more care with those systems to get them into a better place so the game is more playable, because those bugs have an outsized effect. But beyond that, there's also, in particular, a lot of issues that we had with networking and serialization and the replication layer changes that were coming in preparation for server meshing. And I can just speak from my own personal experience debugging some of these things. There were some very complicated, hard to understand bugs that we had to work back to eventually being actually corruption in serialized data that was coming from some bugs in the replication layer, which we could not reproduce that again internally. And that was a wild one to figure out. It was very, very confusing, as you can imagine, because it's rare and it's random and like the data you get doesn't make sense. And you're trying to make sense of like how these things come together. But we got there. There were design and iteration changes. Some of them, we were pretty public about, like the item bank, but also tweaks to the freight elevator kiosk, changes to how the economy tuning works.
Oh, I hope he talks about the item bank
and stuff. So like, and to be fair, we were wanting the patch to be a complete package as much as we could. So given that we were already going late, we didn't entirely shy away from taking some of the time to like also like clean things up on the design side while we're also grappling with some of these harder engineering problems. And then like the final thing I'll say on it is we didn't want the whole schedule to shift. So we still have a lot of other goals. One of them obviously was the Atlas, but there's, things coming up, 4.0. We're obviously still trying to get, Squadron finished and out the door. And we didn't want to just take everything and just like take everyone, focus entirely on this release, get this release out the door and have our whole schedule change for the whole company.
God, I hope he talks about the hover trolleys in this.
There was a lot of people who needed to move on to 4.0 goals or whatever. And so it meant that we needed to keep like the core people that were working on the mainline features on the release, but we didn't have the full force of the company to just close that one specific patch out. We could have, but like I said, it would have, caused problems for our other goals otherwise. So you kind of in total, there's a lot of things that I feel like I've learned from, and I hope in the future, it gives us a better like framework for how to deal with something this complex. And then, yeah, one last thing I'll say is I think there's also just a fundamental problem with the whole conceit of having this many fundamental things in one patch,
Right.
where I think if I would do it again, I would slice it differently and try to do the persistent and instance hangers in their own patch first, and then layer on top all this other stuff. We wanted them to come together as an experience. And I understand, that might have been actually kind of a weird thing for the players to go through, to have like this one particular aspect of that feature set come in without the things that make sense. But from a development perspective, it would have allowed us to harden on the aspects of it that were in particular thorny and
Right.
more of an engineering challenge, and then get that hardened and stable so that we give that to the players, and then layer on top of that all of this other stuff around it. But doing it all together, I think, really challenged us when some of the, like I said, some of the risks didn't break in our favor.
Yeah, you bring up
It's
several
simple to
good
say.
points. And for those of you,
They had to take 2 ISCs to talk about the features coming in. They should have taken 2 patches to deliver them. There you go. Easy math equation.
in the chat are like, wow, if this was an easy question, I hate to see a hard one. I was being facetious.
Yeah,
This
that was
the
not
hard
an easy question.
There lots of times when we talk about a tier 0 feature or whatever, it's we do that thing that Chad was talking about. You can basically, for anything, you can basically do one of 2 courses of action. One, you can split them up into several smaller things, or 2, you can try to push out a suite of stuff. And we attempted to do this suite of stuff for all of this. It was originally attached to an even bigger suite of stuff and everything that was 323. When we've done
Dude, yeah, imagine if they had tried to put all this stuff in 323. Oh, God, that was just never going to happen. Why even say it?
separation in the past, it's a little more stable and certain stuff, certainly, but that's when you tend to see things like, well, I don't understand why this is like this, and I don't understand like this and like this, and we just have to go, well, that's because we didn't give you the second part and the third part and the fourth part, and when you get the second part and the third part and fourth part, that first part will make more sense. And we try to explain that, but when you play the game and you see 1/4 of an experience, you're right when you say this doesn't make any sense. It doesn't, because it's 1/4 of this overall thing. And when you see things like the persistent hangers now, and where we're going with item placement and the item banks and all this stuff like that, this is still just sections of this thing that we'll continue to build out later and later. And you could expect to hear more about that at a big event that's coming up in a few weeks. How many weeks? Don't tell me.
Halloween?
But yeah, so we tried to do this nice package thing, and
Wait,
yeah,
what is he saying you'll hear about at Halloween?
experience, you're right when you say this doesn't make any sense. It doesn't, because it's 1/4 of this overall thing. And when you see things like the persistent hangers now, and where we're going with item placement and the item banks and all this stuff like that, this is still just sections of this thing that we'll continue to build out later and later. And you could expect to hear more about that at a big event that's coming up.
Okay, so they're going to talk more about like item placement and banks and stuff like that at Halloween. I get you.
But yeah, so we tried to do this nice package thing, and
No, you guys are silly. He's talking about Halloween. Sheesh.
yeah, you never know when you start these things. You never know whether the package approach is going to be the right one, or the slicing it up into a bunch of different sections is going to be the right one. In hindsight's always 20/20. But yeah, it was a
Hindsight's 42, Jared.
I really appreciate, and I want to hammer home the part that you and your team basically there on an island by yourself. And then it's yeah, you had help from here and there, but for the most part, the full resources of the company were not there to help you. They all had to stay on other things. They all just to keep the progress on 4.0 going, and the stuff that's beyond going. So it's I appreciate the work you put in, and I think, if I can speak for the community, they all appreciate that you guys. We started talking about this. We first talked about this in ISC in October of last year. That's how long.
Yes. And I've been thinking about it a lot longer than that.
Yeah,
too, so.
yeah. Your small team out there in LA and Montreal.
We have all been thinking about this for quite a long time. Okay. Maybe not all of us, as we've seen from the reaction to this, but a lot of us have been thinking about this for far too long for any healthy human being.
Real has been on this for more than a year and stuff like this. And I hope we all appreciate the folks watching at home and myself that that your dedication of staying with this and sticking with this and getting it resolved, or getting as resolved as you can before the 3.24 release and subsequent hot fixes after that.
Aaliyah and Jotin, good to see y'all in chat. Thank you for the subs. Good old September kind of subs. Thanks for gifting out 5 subs to the community. Enjoy those, folks. Exclusive videos coming out soon-ish. We'll be talking about gold standard ships this time.
All right. What happened with the item drawer change? Let's just get the two big ones out of the way, man.
Yeah.
What I hope to hear him say is, we wanted to ship inventory with parity to the freight elevators, but turns out the inventory needs more than just a screen of items. So we took it back and we're working on it to push it forward again. Please just say that.
It'll be easier after this.
I mean, to me, it's this one. It's not like a challenging question. It's gone on a bit of an arc, and I don't think that arc is completely finished. What's funny about that arc is we've kind of ended up where we started, actually, because like in my in the original proposal for the item bank, it works like it does now, actually, which is like, it's the personal inventory UI, and really like the item bank is more of like an interaction point to trigger that UI. And the reason to understand why that makes sense is because to think about like what you're doing at the item bank. What you're doing really is we're trying to make it easier to get things that make sense from like a FPS player perspective, right? So if you want to get meta pins, you want to get armor, a weapon, these kinds of smaller items, which are often equipment. We want to make that intuitive and easy and quick, frictionless. The personal inventory UI makes sense for that because it has the paper doll view where you can pull things over and like kind of very more tangibly interact with the player and more quickly equip and unequip, swap things out, etc. However, the personal inventory UI, I think everyone that's played the game knows it's not perfect, and there's things that we have long wanted to do about it. And in fact, for this release, it was one of the things that we hoped that we could get to, but we didn't have the time to. We're still going to come back to making improvements to that UI. So for that reason, we had some internal discussion on iterating on it and looking at it. And after we had gotten the freight elevator kiosk UI to a pretty good place, I think people saw before that we originally had this more 3D based UI on the left-hand side of the freight elevator kiosk, which we may come back to at some point with some rethinking. But when we went,
I wonder if I have that. I do remember they had like a different kind of UI at first for that. Let's see if we can find that, because it did look quite different. What would that? Let's just search UI and see if that comes up. Oh boy, this is a lot of stuff came up. Oh, it's not that recent. It would have been inventory, maybe. No, I don't think I would have it actually. Freight elevator. Ah, here we go. Yeah, so this is what it originally looked like. And I think they kind of had it like, I think it was meant to be you could identify where in the 3D volume of your freight elevator things would be, which isn't really that important, I think. I mean, unless you're really, I guess if you were getting like hundreds of boxes of something and you wanted to load something first, you wouldn't want that to load in the back. But this is what the inventory looked like at first when they were starting to do the freight elevator stuff he's talking about.
To the more like kind of straightforward like grid view, and then added certain things like search and better filtering. That experience started to develop in a way that had some functionality advantages over the personal inventory UI. So we had some discussions internally and decided that we would try, moving it over to use just the freight elevator kiosk UI rather than the personal inventory UI. And there was trade-offs, of course. So like some of the like faster, tangible, easier kind of changes are gone, but you have other things like search and filtering that are better. And after giving it to y'all and collecting a lot of feedback and internally, we had to make a call. It was one of these things where there was very strong voices actually on like kind of both ends of it. So I think no matter what,
laughing?
some people, it actually, I just went to a Bar Citizen in Seattle.
Oh, funny, because of our reaction after they gave it to us. We just like completely clobbered it.
And there's like someone would say, man, I'm so happy you made that change. And somebody else would be like, why don't you bring back the freight elevator kiosk UI and the item bank? But I think the answer is going to be, we're going to probably keep it like it is now, but bring over some of the things from the freight elevator kiosk UI, like the search functionality, to make that a better experience itself. So both of them are, they are better user interfaces and UXs in general.
And yes, folks who are in the chat watching, who've done the math, it is 8 o'clock in the morning for Cargo Chat.
Yes.
He woke up extra early on a Friday morning in order to do this. So
Cargo Chad,
be kind. You can talk about how messed up my face is all you want.
I do not understand why we don't just go back to the PMA from Mobiglass and put it in the inventories, the physicalized inventory item banks. Like that works. It doesn't break your point of reference. You're still in first person. You can see your whole body. You can see all your items. You can see the stats of those items. Like what would miss with that? What would be wrong with that?
But let Chad wake up for a little bit. He's doing great. All right, so we got a couple questions here about the hangar itself. So these are the ones that we ended up going to Ian and Rick. These are the design of the physical hangar and the layout and stuff is not typically questions that would work for Chad, as a programmer and engineer and stuff. But these were important. They were highly voted up. We had access to Rick Porter.
Technically, it'd be backward progress because it'd be going back to something they already did.
And Ian, so we went and got the answers for them. So the first question here is: are we going to have more room to park ships and vehicles on the sides of our hangars? The pads are big enough, but the pavement is tiny compared to the rest. There was that question. There was, are there any plans to add side rooms to players' persistent hangars for things such as HABs, fire,
gotta have that side room, huh?
Modification facilities, or even just a large room with a cargo grid where players can customize as they see fit? And can you get rid of the garage in our hangars so we can just set up our furniture better? Too many random cables and boxes lying around. Can you clean up all that garbage that's along the sides? I'm merging all these together because the answer to all of these are sort of the same thing. These are the very first. Okay, I need to rephrase that. From a player perspective, which is you. These are probably we were trying to figure out before the show whether these are the fourth version or the fifth versions of hangars that you've seen. There were two versions made by our partners at Behavior way back in the early days.
Whoa.
and then we attempted a first version, which is what you had before, and then there's this. So I think this is the second version that CIG has made. This is the fourth version of hangars and stuff that you guys have seen. And not all of the features, not all of the intention that we wanted to get in there is in there. I'm going to read these notes from directly from Ian and Rick here. So these are just their words. We plan to add garage modules. So we don't intend to expand the pavement, but there should be more room for vehicles when you could basically add on modules and expand the hangars to the left and right and to the front and back and there's different sections. The plan is for personal hangars to be able to be customized and expanded in the future with the addition of these hangar modules. The exact list of modules are still being defined at this point, so I'm not going to be able to give you a list of whether it's a firing range or something like that. but you will be able to modify your hangars to certain extents and expand them out in other directions and stuff, so that you can bring vehicles out and kind of store them off to the side. You don't have to use the ship elevator for bringing all your ground vehicles and stuff. Or
This is really dependent on the idea that we can have our personal hangar anywhere. I think for a lot of people, right now you can only have it on the planet you spawn on, but I do think that in the future you can just have your, like, this will apply to any hangar as long as you own it. I don't know about rentals. I don't know how they're going to do all of that. I think a big part of this game, strategies of this game, and also money sinks should be that they allow us to buy hangars on space stations and planets and all this stuff. But you have to pay upkeep for that hangar, you know? So you could have as many hangars as you want, but you have to continuously send money to that hangar to make sure that it's maintained and owned and blah, blah, blah. Then you can have certain loadouts in certain hangars, certain ships and vehicles and certain systems, and it also provides for a pretty good credit sink to help spur the economy.
or just your smaller fighters and stuff off to the side. And as far as cleaning up the garbage around the end, we've already done multiple passes for the base hangar OCs, so we're listening to the community and moving in the right direction. That's Ian speaking there. We want to split the data for instance hangars and personal hangars separately, so that we can completely remove everything in the personal hangars while still leaving some form of dressing and world building in the instance hangars. So what this means is that, as we've talked about before, you have your home location, and then you have the instance hangars that you'll get at every other location when you go there. For those, right now, those are using the same OC. So when you remove the dressing from one, you remove the dressing from all of them. We want to split those into two different object containers, so that the instance hangars that you get at every other space station or whatever, those can stay dressed and look good and everything. But your personal hangars, the ones that get assigned to you.
Beef, you can't tell me that you didn't catch that I was talking about the future there when I said now versus later, right? Like I literally said, in the future, you'll be able to own hangars anywhere, and credit sinks could help spur the economy. I couldn't possibly be talking about the economy now, right? If I'm talking about the future. Come on, man.
To you at your home location when you log in, those will be completely empty, and you'll be able to decorate those to your heart's content. That is our intention there. No timeline on when that's going to come. And then, yeah, as far as the, that was it. Oh, and then, I'm sorry, one more question on that. You're just going to listen to me for a little bit, because these are answers from Ian and Rick, so I'm going to give Chad a little break, since Chad did really good in those first two questions. The freight elevators are positioned a bit awkwardly in the hangars for loading and unloading in relation to the ship pad where you land. A lot of the hangar ramps are in the back, and the freight elevators off to the side. Has the team considered moving the elevator to accommodate these? This goes back to the same hangar modules. So of the hangar modules will also be where you place the freight elevator and stuff. So basically when the customization comes in, we anticipate you being able to move the freight elevator to wherever you need it for your particular ship.
Yeah, okay. So like, given something like that, you have to be able to get different hangars in different places, right? It would almost be a waste to just limit that to a planet, because there's so much more stuff you would do from a space station hangar than from a planetary hangar. So I wish that he said that here just as like confirmation, but I assume that we'll be able to own hangars in space stations at some point and be able to customize those instead of our planetary ones. But that's great that there'll be modules. That's good stuff. I think Morph did a video that kind of talked about that being an idea. Glad they're doing that.
Last one in this melange of questions here that were not necessarily for Chad, but were really important that we wanted to get answers to. Are there plans for the station cargo decks to play a role in cargo hauling and logistics gameplay? Folks might remember we added cargo decks to space stations 2 years ago? 3 years ago?
Dude, that was like 4 years ago. That was like the worst thing that they have ever added to this game. Holy crap, let's go take a look-see about when that was. Oh my gosh. What a terrible addition to Star Citizen that was. That, like, I mean, Star Citizen cargo decks, that was, you could tell that they made that when they had different plans for this game, and, or not even different plans for the game, just different plans for the flow of cargo hauling. And they threw this in, and it was like, okay, so How does this work exactly? Let's see if we can find the place where they're talking about this a lot, because this is just...
You should see that they hold up pretty well to those cargo modules, and I would say that the cargo modules themselves on the exterior are super fun to fly through, and that was on purpose. So the player accesses the cargo deck from an elevator, and essentially they come out of an elevator into the cargo space. It's not a super huge space, the cargo deck, but it does give you that impression of a really large scale sort of warehouse and the work going on around you.
For us in audio, we achieve a sense of life.
This was like when it felt like they were going to have a central location for everyone to do the cargo hauling from. Like you would come here and you'd order your cargo, and then it would get delivered through this place to your elevator itself. I never have understood why. I guess maybe this is just a design decision, but it made sense for me that all of the things that were mission or cargo related in terms of transport were from this place. And they had specific hangars that you had to fly to in order to take part in the cargo hauling stuff. But these just got completely forgotten. And I think a big part of it was like these were planned for the game that was going to happen if server meshing actually landed around this time when they thought it would, and it just did not. And so these got left behind in terms of design.
More sort of utilitarian or workman-like supplies as well.
I think the team did a great job in getting the look and feel right on the cargo decks from the exterior and as well as interior. That's really our first step into it, and then as we go on, this allows us to build on the foundation for future patches, whether that be regarding missions and their tie-in to the corporations and you building reputation with them, or for basically side ventures if you're a mercenary or you're a pirate and you want to go and attack these haulers.
Imagine him saying the team got it wrong. They did terribly.
Really working on our guild system and basically which will relate to as perks or specific missions or gifts associated with that career that you've chosen. So I hope everybody sees this as such an important milestone as I do in our journey on building out these decks and really fleshing out the universe.
They came at the same time as refinery decks, and refinery decks got used. I mean, yeah, it's barely used, very, very lightly used. I mean, they were like, go and press a button and you can refine these goods. But compared to the cargo decks, man, it was like, why? Where were they? Here they are, 311. And you could see that, like, they were, let's see, facilities within rest stops where players can handle all their cargo needs, from dropping off and picking up, buying new cargo equipment, and taking on cargo-related missions. We could do the first two. There are missions that stop and end here with the boxes, and there are goods you can buy, but not really much when it comes to actual cargo stuff, which was annoying. Now, I will let you listen to that part again, because I'm going to go to the bathroom when we catch back up. I will be right back.
The elevator to accommodate these. This goes back to the same hangar modules. So of the hangar modules will also be where you place the freight elevator and stuff. So basically when the customization comes in, we anticipate you being able to move the freight elevator to wherever you need it for your particular ship. And then the last one in this melange of questions here that were not necessarily for Chad, but were really important that we wanted to get answers to. Are there plans for the station cargo decks to play a role in cargo hauling and logistics gameplay? Folks might remember we added cargo decks to space stations 2 years ago, 3 years ago? No, it's about. These need a significant rework. They were built with an intention and a design philosophy that existed back then. We've since evolved our thinking on how these things should work, so they will need to basically a rework to incorporate them into the current version of cargo gameplay that Chad and his team have created, have gone out in 3 of 24, and will continue to iterate in subsequent patches.
They still will be using them, which is nice.
So yes, there are plans. We can't tell you what they are just yet because they're still at a point where they're too likely to change between.
They don't know yet. I think it would make a ton of sense for those to be the places where we actually get our cargo missions from. And then our own freight elevators are for our own cargo commodity trading and stuff. Or maybe past a certain SCU amount or something. Like a rest stop should have, when you get to a place in real life, you can carry some boxes out the front door if you don't have much, but then you go around to the back to like the shipping yard if you've got to load a lot of stuff. And that seems like what the cargo decks would be.
Between now and the time where they're implemented, but when we get closer to,
could be used for player-to-player trading too. That's a good call.
Going to be implemented, we will share that information with you. And that's me speaking for Ian and Rick Porter, the portion of our SCL. Chad, did you enjoy your break?
I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Okay, back to Chad. The Atlas, which is the new hotness that's been revealed over
Lobster.
last week in PTU. Has a magnificent tractor beam that is making every other tractor beam look like turd sandwich from a can. Will you implement a mode switch for tractor beams to give functionality like the Atlas has to the multi-tool or dedicated tractor beams so that there's more parity between the three? Or is this something that's exclusively to the Atlas?
For the moment, it's exclusive to the Atlas. There is some discussion internally about like maybe doing that. Nothing confirmed. I feel like that there's some benefit to having it, having there be some diversity in the cinematic universe of tractor beaming as far as like functionality, to differentiate the advantages and disadvantages of certain things. For the moment, we're leaving it as is, but that could change.
I think as we've illustrated, that can change with feedback and as we get more experience.
I would appreciate a more in-depth answer about why there needs to be a significant difference between the way tractor beams work. To be honest, I was thinking that the way this would work would be something like that would use the same size tractor beam as a small ship. So every time they add a different exosuit, whatever function that exosuit has uses the same size of its utility item as a small ship. So you get a cargo-focused exosuit, it uses a size 1 tractor beam for ships. You get a salvage-focused exosuit, it uses the small salvage laser from the Vulture. You get a combat-focused exosuit, it could use a size 1 weapon. I was hoping that that's the way that it would work. Weird that it has different function for the tractor beam anyways.
And so we do more analytics, we see how people are using it. There will always be some distinction though. You want the handheld for boxes of this size, and the larger weapons for the medium boxes, and the Atlas for the larger box. Atlas and the ship tractor beams for the larger boxes and stuff.
Right. So why not have that tractor beam be the same as the ship ones? I don't get that.
But yeah, when he says no plans right now, that's what that means. No plans right now. But if you followed Star Citizen
next week, right?
If you followed Star Citizen for any period of time,
look at the item bank, right? Like we take feedback seriously, so we'll figure out what makes sense for the game, but like my understanding as far as like what we're doing right now with all this is it's just going to be the way that it is.
Yeah. So that's Cargo Chad and me saying, make your points. Share your point of view, make your solid, considered arguments, not just the pitchfork stuff. Our history is replete with dozens and dozens of examples where we've heard what you said and adjusted these things. So if you feel strongly about it, continue to feel strongly about it, continue to share that, and we'll see what the plan is later.
I only have a regular sized fork.
Will we be, so in the Sitcon goodie pack, by the way, there's a Sitcon goodie pack. I think it might be available now. I don't know. I'm not in that part of marketing, so I don't know. But in the Sitcon goodie pack, there were beds. We sold beds? in the goodie pack?
Even this guy's surprised.
This question is asking if we'll be able to log in or out of our hangars moving forward with these beds that are in the sitcom pack.
Ooh.
Um,
Oh, let's talk about the bed mechanic.
When you get it, I don't think so, but look, I'll say this. We plan on, and as I've said before about bed logging, we're definitely going to work more on bed logging, and we're going to work more on logging in and out. And one of
I don't think they want to talk about bed logging. I think that makes them a little nervous.
the things in particular that we're going to work on is logging in and out of hangars specifically. We want to support that. That's something that we've already been working on to some extent on the technical side, but there's still more work to go there. I don't want to say that when you get this particular thing, a certain feature is going to be supported in the next release, though. So, like, as far as that goes, like, I don't plan on that being a supported thing by then. But logging in and out of hangars and bed logging is going to be developed further, is what I'll say.
You said a lot of words. I want to get this very concise. You're telling us that at some point, I'm not saying the next release, but at some point you will be able to log in and out from your hangars.
Yes, 100%. That's definitely a thing that we're going to support.
Because my least favorite thing in the world is having to wake up in the hab and go to the hangar. So that would be lovely. Thank you, Chad. That's not my least favorite thing in the world. David's my least favorite thing in the world. He just did a Yelp. It was like a 1950s like a Scream Queen. Like, what work is being done to stop our hangar deco from bouncing around so that we can make our hangars the way they are shown in ISC? We actually answered this last week with Benoit.
Dude,
it's here because I want to refer people back to Benoit.
Bed logging is like one of those things that I don't think they want to talk about because they're still figuring out the design of how they want it to work. Because they're no longer sticking to the idea that just beds are where you can log out and on, right? He literally just said we're working on getting it so that you guys can log out and in at hangars. So I think that they've got a lot of difficult questions to answer when it comes to ship designs and stuff like that and bed logging. I know they've said that beds will still give you buffs, but there's going to be so many complications, I think, allowing people to log out and in anywhere they want. And now they've been on camera saying they're going to allow that. Yeah, I don't know. Are they going to let other people log in and out wherever they want? Like, can you then fly a Pisces into a Javelin and your whole org logs in on that Pisces?
Basically, it is not a feature issue. It is a matter of physics. Physics is one of the largest performance hits to the server. So that is basically it, trying to negotiate the physics of all those items placed on other items. As server performance improves, as server meshing provides us the benefits to server performance that we all hope it will, and stuff like this, that problem will become less and less severe as it is, and then we'll be able to go in and find the individual edge cases that cause it here and there and there. But basically, it's one of those things. It's literally one of those things where it works on my computer, and then you put it up on a server with 100 people, and it starts flopping around. Which is why it looks one way on ISC, and it looks another way in live. We show the intention of the feature and how it's supposed to work, and it is basically a performance-related error that's causing it in the servers right now. So as we continue to optimize, we continue to improve performance, that will resolve most of those issues, and then we can go in and do the edge cases.
I haven't even tried hangar customization yet.
In the 324 PTU, you were originally able to add 1 SCU cargo mission boxes into larger 8 SCU boxes for transport. That was really nice, by the way. This has since been removed since launch. I hate you, Chad. Any plans to bring this back?
Wait, what? Sorry.
SCU boxes for transport. That was really nice, by the way. This has since been removed since launch. I hate you, Chad. Any plans to bring this back?
That's a good question. It's more that there were some issues on the delivery side. We needed more sophisticated logic to handle the freight elevator delivering nested contents for delivery. So we we rolled that back because we were having some issues having that work like consistently. But it is a thing that like we've talked about with the mission team, and I think at some point we'll probably bring it back. But for the moment, it's more of just it's one of the things we had to like give up on in order to get the release out the door.
Okay. Currently in Live 324.
Yes, being able to have a cargo grid anywhere, like if you set down a box, that box creates a cargo grid or something like that, would be fantastic. Why the heck did this monitor just turn? Dude, this is such a stupid monitor.
When we call our ships while we are in a party member's hangar, our ships spawn in our personal hangar instead of the party member's hangar. Will that change in the future?
For sure. This is another one of those things where we had to, make some calls as far as like what we were going to try to deliver on this release. And if people saw like the very early, actually, I'm not sure this part of it got to Avocati or not, but at one point we actually had a drop down where you could pick on the freight elevator kiosk a party member and actually choose their inventory there. So we were trying to like really integrate party members into that hangar experience. But on both of these, where we ended up is needing to remove it, just again, get the release done. But also, I think we realized that there's like some more design considerations around the experience of security and permissions, and party membership isn't always the right fit to answer some of those questions anyways. So there's definitely some design work to do there as far as like the experience and how you attribute or revoke certain kind of rights in your hangar or to other players. But we do want to allow that general kind of flow where you can have your friends there that you're playing with, be it in a party or in a group or an org or whatever, and then have a way to spawn your ship in there. Additionally, the ATC did not really support this pattern very well. And it's because the ATC is an old system that was originally written with Port Olisar in mind. And just some landing pads of Port Olisar. That was the original implementation of ATC. So this whole idea of like even hangars is kind of alien to that system, let alone that multiple people could be in a hangar. And we've kind of
had that ATC coming back and being in a complete about it.
To, build that into it, but it has some fundamental concepts like this thing called a permission token that don't really make sense in that world, which is why we're reworking some of the implementations to essentially, actually, this is kind of getting at like one of the core things that we're going to do is separate out from ATC hangar management as a concept. And ATC is going to become a simpler system that all it deals with is requests to land and exit. And so it's really just governing the entryways to the hangars, and that's it. And then have a separate system for hangar management for ships and all that. And included in that can be the idea of like, how do you handle different situations and corner cases around multiple ships, including multiple ships from multiple players.
How much?
Yeah, like, how about, like Echo said in chat, how about some org stuff, man? Weren't they were talking about that like fairly, maybe that's something that we'll see at CitizenCon actually. Because they were very adamant about the fact that they are working on something org related towards the beginning of this year. But who knows? Who knows? This stuff just like goes in one window and out the other, and maybe it wasn't right for the year.
ATC now. Can be real.
It knows what it did.
I'm pretty sure that ATC has been a part of the PU since it was first introduced in late November, early December 2015. I mean, it is when you say, oh, it's an old system, it is literally the oldest system of the PU. I'm not entirely certain even the folks who made it originally are even still with the.
It's
the
such a pain.
They're not.
Yeah, they're not. So it was. It's like what we say with the old MFDs and stuff. It was good for its time and it served its thing for its time. But I think everybody is in agreement both player and developer alike at this point, that we need a new, more robust service to replace it.
Yeah. And to be fair to that system, like it wasn't really designed with this in mind, right? So we've been pushing it, but we just have to break it at this point.
Yeah, org stuff is probably post 4.0.
We need to we need to be more ambitious for their breaking of it.
Yeah, I'm realizing this is probably not the kind of conversation you'd see it in the promotional material for any other game development. Are they like talking about how much they hate a game feature? I'm like, yeah. We recognize the same thing you do. We're all in the same boat. It needs an update right now. So that is being spec'd out, and that work is being assigned out as we speak. There's no ETA on it because, like I said, it's still early days and that stuff. But it's
early days.
I can't sit here and pretend like it's the greatest thing ever. I hate.
No, I mean, every time I see a report of players saying or QA finding like a door not opening, I feel it in my bones.
Yeah. What was it? Rhino Separath 1972 says ATC has stolen millions from me.
Yes.
Yep. No.
ATC is definitely, it's on that short list of worst things in the game.
Honestly, we should just. I hope there's like a permanent prisoner in Kleishner once we replace it, and we just name him ATC, and he's just like, I used to do good. We were talking about vehicle spawning in different hangars. Is spawning vehicles from the cargo elevator still planned? I think we mentioned it in one of those early ISEs and whatever, and we haven't heard much about it since it was removed.
Absolutely. It's still a thing that we want to do. Now that we've had a bit more time, I think we're also
they don't rebuild the game every 2 years. That you might have missed that. He's saying that this system that they're talking about, ATC, is 9 years old. There are a few different systems like that cause the game to be super unstable. ATC is one of them. The transit system is one of them. Before this, like something like the star map was kind of like that. We had the same star map since 2017. And there are a couple other things that are like that. So there are things that definitely do get redone, like the cargo, for instance. The cargo decks are kind of a waste, but specifically this was about something that is so incredibly old that it's entirely outdated, and they've been waiting until server meshing in order to redo it, which is why they're finally starting to talk more about it.
Considering that experience a little bit more as far as like how that works, and also potentially supporting things like the Atlas. But definitely it's a thing that's going to come. Yeah, it's definitely coming.
Okay. Can we have an option to remove or disable the alarm in the hangar every time a ship is called?
I don't know about that. It's not a thing that we've talked about or I've heard even feedback on. But one thing I'll say is we are looking at ways to make it faster, that whole loop, because we want to make getting ships like a quicker experience. Like I think at this point people have enjoyed the pomp and circumstance of getting these ships. It's a really cool thing when you do it. But of course, with anything, you do it enough times and
yes.
You kind of just want to get your ship, right? So we're looking at potentially some ways where you're getting, let's say like a Titan or something like out of an XL hangar. It feels kind of absurd, like the giant experience that unfolds for you over the period of time it takes.
Right.
So we're looking at, for example, maybe we can like preset the loading platform height, or maybe adjust some timings to make it faster, so you don't have to wait quite as long, but without changing some of the fundamental elements of that experience. We still want it to feel big and important, and have that pomp and circumstance, have it feel somewhat epic, but where it makes sense, have the ability to like have that time not as long for the smaller requests. I don't know that we'll outright disable the sound there. Well, but again, if there's lots of feedback on that point, maybe
some people just don't like loud alarms blaring at them all the time. Like, My car doesn't make alarm sounds when I call it up. It's actually quite nice. It says, hello, thank you for using the video dash cam or whatever the freaking hell it's. So what, this is Tomato, what does that thing say? It's very annoying. It says it every time. But I think we can turn it off. So there's that.
I want to make a suggestion. Some of the best things in Star Citizen came from my ideas. That's not true. Eventually, we have to make some kind of, you mentioned it before, some kind of hangar manager, a thing, you know, especially when they start adding the customizable rooms and stuff like this. In the hangar manager, there should be like a couple of default ringtones listed in there, just like when you get a new Motorola phone or whatever, and you can just set it so that you can change the alarm sound. The alarm sound can sound like a French police car or whatever. You just different sounds so that people can change
Gangnam
it every
style.
once in a while.
Every time.
Okay, we'll take that into consideration. Thank you.
I don't
Nokia
think
tone.
he's really going to take that into consideration, chat. I think chat's shining me on.
I would love to hear some blaring bagpipes every time I call a ship up.
All right, so a lot of this is focused on hangars and stuff like this. There is a series of vehicles that are kind of out there on the left there, the Hull series. Talk to us about what the end goal for this. What is the experience loading and unloading a Hull series ship supposed to be like?
Well, I mean, it's obviously what we have now is I would say tier 0 implementation.
Oop.
We wanted to get something in for the hulls that was unique because it's a unique ship in the game. It can't land with the spindles extended, and it's big. It's epic, and we wanted the cargo loading for this ship and the series beyond that to feel like it made sense for the cargo trading at that scale, and in particular have that visual be like something that was like compelling. And so we wanted to make that cargo loading in and out like feel like something that was like physically like building up and reducing on the ship. However, obviously, it's just doing this like popping in thing, and then also it doesn't support any manual loading. So in the nearer term, we are looking at adding support for manual loading for the Hull series and any other ship that might need to dock for cargo support. And I'm not going to say like any particular release or anything, but like absolutely we're looking at bolstering the support for those ships, or not just bolstering, but creating the support for those for manual loading at those loading areas on the exterior of the stations, and actually adding to them and having potentially multiple. We're considering different ways to make the throughput on that system make sense, both to allow for multiplayer. And
we have a trailer that shows us, yeah? Like, this is how it's supposed to play out. Okay, I think that song gets me copyright trouble. Like, you're supposed to be able to basically just have a bunch of Argos in your group. I don't think anybody ever wants to do this as a solo, but in your group, you have people with Argo ships, with Nomads, with whatever has a tractor beam, basically just moving the stuff onto the grids here over time. And then you launch and you go away. I would hope that's how it's supposed to play, and we should have the external cargo elevators, which they talked about, I think, in this patch or this video.
Direct access from your hangar to the cargo deck, and that's where you can buy your commodities or sell them, and then you can return right away into your instance hangar and then go off on your trip. From there you can also access the external freight elevators to easily load your Hull Cs, and so we've made these gameplay loops much less tiring in Pyro.
And
Yeah, so I think that they obviously are going to have those in Stanton, but I wonder if we'll ever actually see AI ships flying around loading those. That's the plan. That's supposedly the end goal. It just feels so far away,
put on that system makes sense. both to allow for multiplayer and ships using tractor beams to help optimize that loading time. And I think that will be a really big, like, meaningful change. Beyond that, obviously, we still plan on doing a better implementation of the automatic loading for the whole series, be it NPCs or drones. I think that probably is going to be later because it's more of like a visual experience and less of like a gameplay experience, whereas like the manual loading would be a really big, meaningful change from like the actual in-game experience for the players. So
as long as we can manually load a whole sea, I think that's on its own a big part of org gameplay and just groups in general.
We have now.
Bluesmink, you're asking a question about the missions. That's a question for the mission team, not for Chad. Where was that? H Lander 1337 says, "Is this the SCL live that announces Pyro is coming out?" Yes, Pyro is coming out eventually.
Dude, we've heard that on so many Star Citizen lives. When was the first time we heard that Pyro was coming out?
It's ready.
You don't have to tell me. It's 2019.
Heard it here and everywhere else. What's the current status of hover trolleys? Are there still plans to give players this or another method to move multiple cargo boxes around locations at once?
Give me that.
Yes, so hover trolleys, another thing that was sacrificed to the release gods. In particular, the hover trolleys have some new physics around their behavior, and they were being pretty wonky, I'll put it like that, as far as the actual like attachment onto the hover trolley, not with the attachment, but how the hovering dealt with it. So like you would suddenly have this attachment and like the thing would kind of like sway around and sometimes like violently flip over or something. So there's some physics issues with it that need to get sorted. And also there's some questions about quite how to integrate it into the game loop as far as, you know, how you get them or, you know, is that something that you buy or can you find them in the world, et cetera, et cetera. So we took a step back from that to focus on getting the release out the door, but it's not forgotten. They are going to come back once we've kind of smoothed out the implementation and the physics problems, and then also pin down exactly like how we want players to use them and where they are in the game.
Okay, see, now this is key because I feel like the cargo trolleys need to be able to carry more than just like 4 SCU boxes. Like I should be able to carry at least 20 something SCU, probably more than that, like 30 something SCU on the hover trolleys if it's going to be really useful. Because for the most part, if I'm using a hover trolley, I want to be able to make a single trip with it. Right, the entire point of the hover trolley should be that if I'm loading a small to medium-sized ship, then I am decreasing the trips that I need to make from freight elevator to ship by at least half, if not more. The one time they showed it to us, I feel like there just wasn't enough cargo on the trolley itself. That was here. Like those look like 1 SCU boxes, right? So that's 6 SCU that thing's carrying, if I'm not mistaken. In my opinion, that just doesn't seem like enough. Like you should be able to stack or something at least. This especially if you're talking about a star lifter like they are here. Dude, boost that up. Let me stack it up a little bit more. At least 18 SCU, come on. That's just not enough.
Implementation and the physics problems, and then also pin down exactly like how we want players to use them and where they are in the game. So yeah, it's still coming. I will, I will say there are, beyond the hover trolleys, there are other things in addition that we're always looking at as far as like figuring out how to make the game loop for moving cargo better. And certainly I think in mass is certainly like a thing that now that we have manual loading in the game, we have more experience with it. It's clearly like there's like this interesting point where if you're not dealing with the largest boxes in the game, some like combinations of medium to small boxes can be cumbersome. So it's definitely like a thing that we're aware of, and there's, I think, going to be continued
hover trolleys, dude. Yeah, I really
new things like the upcoming Atlas. So it's coming in 3.24.1, which is in testing on the PTU. A bunch of people asking me.
Was it not live by the time this video went out? I thought it was. I thought this was. Man, when did 3.24.1 go out? Expat tries to make fun of machinima video. Also, great machinima-ist, right?
How much the pledge will cost? I don't know. I'm not in those meetings. We've been talking a lot about...
The patch came out that day? Okay.
This says, how will paying a fee to auto-load our cargo work? Isn't that...
I'm not sure I understand, because you pay a fee to auto load now.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's a weird question. I thought that's pretty much the thing. We'll skip ahead.
Wait,
hey, we'll get to...
No. There's a lot that could be answered there, because we have this picture. Where is it? This is a design. Yeah, I would love for them to talk about this. Where the heck is that picture? Here we go. No, wrong one. This one. This kind of implies, and we've looked at this a couple times. This kind of implies that you could pay more to have a faster load time. And I would really love to hear if that's still in the plans, because I think that would make a big difference to a lot of people if they knew they had the ability to change how the auto loading works based on what their priority is, whether it's time or money. Like sometimes you're cool with waiting 20 minutes to load something because you got work to do, you got other things to do. Maybe you got to take a step away from the computer or something. Other times, maybe you just want to pay a little bit extra money and get that stuff loaded as quickly as possible. And I think that could have been a good chance for them to answer something about this. Bummer that they did not.
We'll get out a little.
I mean, maybe I can answer a question they didn't ask.
Sure.
Which is auto loading always going to work the way that it does now?
Sure.
The answer is we're going to build on that. Right now, auto loading is built into the commodity trading experience, in part because that was the quickest way that we could do it. I think we'll always want to have that because it's convenient in order to just make those decisions when you're doing trading. However, there are times when it would be convenient to auto load things that aren't necessarily part of a transaction or after a transaction.
Like mission cargo can't be auto loaded. Right?
Mission cargo, but also items in general that you have. Maybe you want to load those into the ship. And so a full auto loading experience is a feature that we're currently looking at, as far as making it to where you can just have whole sets of stuff. If you just don't want to touch the freight elevator, right? You just don't like it. That's fine. We're looking at having an experience for you to where you can say okay, I want this arrangement of stuff, and as long as it fits into the cargo grids on the ship, then it'll move them around. And now that we've
oh my God, this is probably bliss to some people's ears. There are a lot of comments online that are still like, why can't I just pay to have this stuff loaded? And it's like, well, you can. And I realize that there are the missions they don't allow, but now he's confirming that in the missions you can, and even your own items. That's kind of cool. Like if you bought a bunch of guns for your orc and you just want them loaded to your ship, that'd be nice. That'd be a nice convenience to pay for.
Where the cargo grids support so many different items, that means that there's a lot more opportunity to make that work. Of course, there'll be a small fee associated with it, but it will, I think, support. It's kind of a bigger solution to, instead of just solving it specifically for mission items. It's something that you can do more generally, and then also, we talked about small vehicles. That would be a solution, right? If you didn't want to, drive it out yourself.
No, not just spawning.
Yeah, a lot of people make their own engines,
cargo, but spawning a ground vehicle in a cargo crate. That can then.
Well, I'm saying you could have the ship stowed, and then request to have the vehicle loaded into the ground vehicle loaded into your vehicle. Yeah.
Okay.
That sounds like a key detail.
Cargo crate. That can then.
Well, I'm saying you could have the ship stowed, and then request to have the vehicle loaded into the ground vehicle loaded into your vehicle. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be great.
Will the search bar accept actual item names in the future and not just the internal identifier?
Right now, I mean, it's using the what we call the lock string. So I mean, it does, but the problem is there's various kinds of data associated with these items that are in different places, and what we haven't done is really built that out. But like it does use the localized item name. But there are other kinds of fields and stuff that it could be built out. In fact, one of the bugs that we had when we first added it is that it was just using the lock name and not the localized name. And it would make it really confusing because some things are really close to the actual end string and some things just aren't at all. And you would search for certain stuff and it wouldn't find them. And the reason is because it was searching the lock ID.
7-month membership anniversary. Thank you for being here. Appreciate you. 7-month membership milestone. Nothing else mattered until I joined. Appreciate you being in chat all this time. And especially through such a big time of your life. I hope things are going well for you guys. Thank you for being here.
But not the localized name, but that's not the case anymore. But there are other kinds of fields that it's not searching on. And sometimes, I think to make that a little bit confusing, sometimes there's different strings shown in different UIs. So like, for example, the shop UI might use like a different string for the purchasable display from like the item ports editing and stuff like that. So more to be done, but it is using the localized name.
There's a localized name and a lock name.
Lock ID. So like the localized name is like if you're playing, in a certain localization on the client.
You see the English version or the Spanish version or whatever.
Exactly.
Is lock ID, is lock and lock ID short for localization?
John Locke?
Yes. So there's some.
So there's a localization and a lock ID, which is also short for localization?
Yes, but like the way to think of it is like a lock ID is a single identifier for something that will be localized, right? So we have to have some hook, some way to reference a string that has a variation for all the different languages. So that hook, that identifier, is what we call a lock ID.
Gotcha.
So it might be like if I have like a mug, right? It might be mug black one jellyfish because there's a jellyfish on it, right? But then the actual localized string that the players would see would, some
Jellyfish mug.
Yeah, jellyfish mug. But then, it'd have a different one in German, a different in Spanish, et cetera, et cetera. So that lock ID is what in code and just like the systems normally pass around because it's something that's understood both by the server and the client. And if you change your localization at runtime, it's something that it's consistent. It's also it's a reference. It's not like a unstructured data as a string. I could go on more, but so that's basically it, which is just more of an identifier that then gets localized. However, when you search, you want to search on the localized version. And that means that on the client needs to say when we do a search, here's the lock ID, but here's the locale, here's the localization that you're going to use. And then on the back end, it needs to use that for the string parsing. And we actually have a different database that it searches on that has a different localization on each, because that's the only way that you can make it work. You have to you search on different partitions of the data based on the localization.
Too complicated. Just read my mind and know what I'm looking for and bring it up for me. That's all I want.
I get you. Sometimes I ask questions for the community. Sometimes I ask questions for me. That was a question for me. And now I have to go fight Jens Lind. That's unfortunate.
What's up, Rukin? Dude, you can haul my cargo, man.
Do not work particularly well on the freight elevators. For example, mining bags. What's being done to resolve those?
Oh my God, the mining bags is such a pain. Like, that's something that we should have had years ago at this point. Being able to trade mining bags out between the different... Like, I just want to be able to take something somebody mined and go sell it. Is that so hard? Or refine it? I mean, yes, the answer is probably yes, but... It really kills the ability to do bigger mining operations. Like, just... It hurts. Vastin, I know that you're grabbing your face right now because I know you're into that, dude. Rukin, you can oh, you can ring my bell. That's just like you can haul my cargo. Sorry.
Great question. Unfortunately, another thing that got cut. This one's in particular, it hurt me because I made the packing and the attachment behavior, and the system, the packing and arrangement works, but there's one bug I'll get to in a second that didn't. And unfortunately, because most of the items work, another thing that was sacrificed to the release gods, uh, which
Wow, the
hurt
release
me
gods
'cause
suck.
I
Terrible gods.
want it to be good because I like to be proud of my work. But the issue in particular with those, if you allow me to get a little bit technical for a moment, is the pivot. So for things like cargo boxes, the pivot is on the bottom and the center. And whenever I originally wrote the packing system way back for the whole C, the only thing that we were putting into the cargo grids at that time were the cargo boxes. I knew that more things were coming, so the packing system itself can expect any kinds of dimensions and handles multiple orientations. But the pivot was something that I just didn't have time to generalize. I had to just essentially kind of like hard code it to expect the pivot in a certain place on the item. And the technical challenge there is you might say, well, I'm holding the item. How do you not know where the pivot is? The problem is when you're doing things like calling stuff up from a freight elevator, you don't have the item. The entity isn't spawned. You don't have the geometry for it. You can't directly access the pivot. So you have to have some way to know where it would be without loading like the skeleton and deriving it, which would be incredibly slow. So what we have to do is like essentially like kind of bake that data out into a data set that can be read from an asynchronous persistence query or based on the class data. So that's the work to be done here. It won't take too long, and it's possible it comes in, very, very soon. But that's essentially it. Is like the reason is the mining bags and these things, their pivots are in a different place than most of the other items in the game. And the system isn't yet expecting that the pivot might be somewhere else than where most of the other items pivots are. And for that reason, the way that it rotates around and the way that it orients itself on the cargo grid is just wrong for that particular thing, which particularly for the mining bags suck because they're situated in a way that actually puts them through the freight elevator. And sometimes when you detach, they actually drop down, which is awful. So like definitely aware of it. But yeah, fix is going to be forthcoming.
If you can get technical. Okay, last two questions, Chad. You're almost at the end, and then you can go and start your day proper.
Dude, it sucks because I feel like the mining bags and the way that we can use them together is just, it's such a pain. Like, these are the kind of things that make org gameplay not very fun. Yeah, the background's very Chad energy. I was like such a Chad thing back there. But I don't think I've ever seen that barbell move. All right, Chad, you actually using that, or you just put it back on the same place, huh? Which one is it? That's a nice cage, though. I need one of those. But yeah, we need better mining bag functionality. How many people think that they're going to change the mining bags overall? You think they'll stick with them? Because they're kind of like every single mining vehicle that comes out will have to use them, and they don't have those bags in the Orion. So will the Orion just have a completely separate system, or what? How's that going to work?
You're almost at the end, and then you can go and start your day proper. Will we be able to spawn multiple ships at once in the same hangar?
Yes.
Yay!
Got any more? How do we envision that?
2077, the board game. Infrarotas, what's up, dude? Good to see you. Thanks for popping in. Can you make a Halo-style FPS? Can they make a Halo-style FPS? I mean, they have FPS in the game. I wouldn't say it's Halo-style. Oh, I see what you mean. God dang it.
So yeah, I mean, definitely it's a thing that we're looking at on the design side. And so I don't want to give like complete answers because that's something that might change a little bit. But in short, we want it to be to where you can spawn multiple ships, especially in these XL hangars where you have these huge platforms, and certainly you have the room. There's just some thought that has to go into all these different permutations. Let's say you have a ship on the platform and you want to get another ship. Right now, the way the system works is if you get a different ship, we're going to sell the first one. But you don't always want to do that. How as a player do you express that, or how do you understand that what's going to happen?
ASOP.
Do you have any control over the arrangement of it, et cetera, et cetera? So those are things that are getting like pinned down on the design side. But the goal itself that we want to be able to spawn multiple and give players more control over that is something that we're going to do.
Okay. And last question is, will we, or have you ever considered the ability to name our cargo boxes so that we'll know what was in them when we move stuff around?
Or color. Let me color them at least.
Another thing that is on the design side we're still working on. I remember talking about this like a year and a half ago about like how we could handle this, because before this release, we added the inventory containers at the end of last year, but we were working on it, before then, especially on the design side. So this is something that we've known about for some time, and those boxes all look the same. So if you have lots of different boxes, how do you know what's in them? And we've had lots of ideas so far as tinting and labeling and naming, et cetera, et cetera. And then also potentially wanting that to be something that you could maybe search on in the freight elevator kiosk, right? I'm not going to commit to one particular solution there because, as I said, there's still some design work that needs to be done to like make the final call about like how that's going to work, and then we would do the actual implementation. But it is a thing that we want to address for sure.
Yeah. Because like all the boxes look the same. Basically, you could be transporting diamonds or human poop, and you don't know which box it's in.
You did it. How do you feel?
Dude, Fable's coming out next year. Great. Mark my words.
Definitely feel great now that the release is out. Point one is coming soon. I think that there's a lot of good things coming. I also want to just thank all the players for working with us on this release. I know, especially whenever it originally came out, it was like pretty rocky. There was some real surprises that happened when we went from PTU to live. We tried real hard to go from that state to something that's more playable. And I think point one is going to be an even bigger jump there. So I just want to thank everyone for having so much fun and helping us with this release. It's been a big push. And I'm happy that we finally got here.
Big ol' push.
Well, thanks, Chad. That was Chad McKinney. I don't remember what his title. What's your title, Chad?
Senior lead gameplay.
Senior lead gameplay engineer.
Star Chad.
Been in the cargo trenches for more than the last year. So thank you for taking the time. This will probably be the last show. We've done 6 or 7 shows on cargo and hangars in this just for this release. So this will probably be the last one. We'll see you for whatever the next thing is. Take care, Chad.
But also, what are you working on next, dude? We don't even know where what he's moving on to from that. Star Chad.
You can leave. I got to do some housekeeping. Stuff. So, folks, that's it. That's the show.
You didn't know his name was actually Chad?
Probably going to be the last SCL for a while. There won't be an SCL next week. That if you've noticed or if you joined late in the show, you've seen this absolute horror show right here. I'll be down getting my face scan next Friday to do that and stuff. So there's no show next week, and then we're into the big CitizenCon hustle there. We've only got.
You mean LOL hustle? He says.
One episode of ISC left. That'll be last week, and then ISC will go on hiatus until after CitizenCon. So there might be an SCL or one or two that we squeeze in there every once in a while, depending on availability and stuff like this. But for the most part, we're here at the threshold of a hiatus. So
the next 3 weeks are going to be so dead. Oh my God, the community is going to eat itself alive. Oh God. Oh boy, this is gonna be fun, especially because it sounds like he said there's no more ISCs after this week, right? So it's just gonna be engineering and then dropped it. Oh boy. So what do you guys think? Is cargo the end of Star Citizen? Is it over? Has it died? Actually, what did you think of this show? I think there were a lot of answers in there that were good, informative stuff, but also a lot of stuff that was just, gives you that same old Oh, okay. So it's coming later kind of feeling. Things like when can we call up vehicles in the cargo elevator? When can we customize our cargo elevator? Stuff like that. It's nice that they talked about auto loading for commodities and items. I think that's going to make a lot of people more happy. The fact that you could basically play the game without ever touching a freight elevator. That's important to a lot of people. That is, I think, one of the big things that people thought cargo was going to ruin the game with, was just, oh, I always have to manually load stuff. We are looking at a time when you never have to load stuff, which is a good call. If you watch the last 2 SCU lives on cargo, I discussed this, but TLDR, we need a better permission system, and for orgs, we need to have an in-game org system. Both of those are planned, including our inventory integration. Okay, hey, all right, remember that part where Jared was like, well, we're going to talk more about inventory stuff in an event coming up in a few weeks, and I was like, oh, it's Halloween. Yeah, you fucking idiots. It's not Halloween, it's CitizenCon. Big surprise. And I bet you they'll talk about org stuff. I bet you they're going to talk about org stuff at CitCon. That would be fan-freaking-tastic. Atlas Q&A. All right, so this is where we'll get to the real talk about cargo and stuff. Let's see what they have to say. So, plenty of things to be said about this item. I think this could have been a very good first opportunity for them to really show how they're trying to push things into game and not just into store. And missed opportunity. But we have so many of those in Star Citizen, I could make a book. So we'll move past that and we'll just talk about the thing itself. Does it provide any environmental protection? I'm pretty sure that's a no. No environmental protection. There are currently no restrictions on what you can wear in the pilot seat. However, this isn't a long-term intent, which is the case for all vehicles. That's a key detail, actually. That's another one of those things that new players are probably going to find to piss them off quite a bit when it happens. But this is, just remember, like, these are the kinds of little messages they leave here and there that do clue you in on where they're going. They are going to restrict what you can wear when you're sitting in a pilot seat. Keep that in mind. Dayalk, long-time watcher, first-time chat. Welcome to the chat, buddy. It's good times. You need a nap already, Luna? It's almost time. Just a couple more minutes. Does the Atlas provide any armor for my character? Does it influence my hitbox? Oh, good question. The Atlas is invulnerable, but any bullets that hit the player will deal the same damage as they usually would. We will be following up in a future release to include damage, visual damage effects, and destruction, so the Atlas won't be invulnerable forever. So it'll probably function with Maelstrom. Does the Atlas come with any storage? No. Is it equipped with bright headlights to help you work at night? That is a no. However, they intend to add lights to the Atlas in a future update. How are you going to have an exosuit without lights? How the... What? Are there any exchangeable vehicle components? Paints are supported, but vehicle components and tractor beam are not customizable. Plans to update the Atlas to make the use of the resource network feature. Yeah, likely adding a battery that needs to be physically swapped out to replace. We talked about this during my gameplay with Avocado. This is probably a huge drawback to the thing. Is keeping this powered and maintained is actually going to be another step in owning it. And it might just not be worth it for somebody who's just casually hauling around boxes. Like if you have a C2, or sorry, a C1, and you're doing like a couple dozen cargo at a time, something like this is probably not worth it, you know? But if you were, you know, regularly doing some large boxes and stuff like that, then maybe you'd need more of that. Yeah, it's a good drawback to it. And it makes sense. Something like this definitely needs to have a battery or a reactor of some sort. How fast does it move? We can kind of already see that in the game. Can it jump? Does it reduce my fall damage? It cannot jump. No fall damage is taken currently because it's invulnerable. How does it behave in EVA? We saw that. We we fell from one ship to the other and it worked surprisingly well. That was nice. Does the Atlas tractor beam gameplay mechanic differ from handheld tractor beams? Okay, here we go. As a dedicated cargo loader, the tractor beam automatically moves its target adjacent to its user, making it easier to view the surroundings. A destination preview hologram is then displayed in the environment wherever the user aims, with color coding indicating a cargo grid or surface placement. The tractor beam's target is moved to the hologram's location automatically when the fire button is pressed. This provides faster cargo movement and faster cargo grid selection. I feel like it should be a hold down the mouse button, but I might be sorely wrong about that, because that does get a little annoying on the finger. Secondary fire mode allows the tractor beam to be thrown instead of placed. Okay, I didn't know that. A charge functionality increases the throw strength the longer the input is held. When targeting ships or ground vehicles, typical tractor beam functionality is employed instead of allowing smaller upturned vehicles to be rotated and set down. Okay. I didn't know you could charge and throw things. That's fun. I guess that's what people have been doing with bombs, huh? Can you injure other players with them? It does not move fast enough to cause damage. It can kill them if it lands on top of them in normal gravity. Hurling cargo containers at others is not advised, as it can lead to any number of injuries or even death. That sounds like the warning label that you would find on the vehicle itself. Not super helpful, but obvious. You can't use FPS items. Due to the nature of the new cargo loading, tractor beam combined efforts are not possible for moving boxes, but targeted ships and vehicles will combine the forces of multiple beams. Does it count as a vehicle? Yes, it does, from what I've seen. Can you use passenger elevators, stroll through landing zones, or use public transportation? I've seen people get this into elevators for sure. There's usually wear on the coolers, and those coolers don't have much health. Yeah, if this thing has a battery, it might need a cooler too. Resource network is going to be a huge balancing modifier for a lot of this kind of stuff. The Rock also, yes, would need the same drawbacks of resource network. The Rock, the Mule, any vehicle, really. Anything, even weapons, even armor. Armor is going to be powered in the future. And so it'll need some kind of power source occasionally, depending on the type of armor you have. Anything else interesting here? How do I transport from A to B if I don't have a vehicle with an onboard garage? You're gonna need a ship. Can I lift the Atlas with the handheld tractor beam tool? Yes. Does it use batteries or fuel? We intend to have a replaceable battery using the resource network in the future, okay? Recent changes to the multi-tool and dedicated tractor beams. With the launch of the Atlas and its new tractor beam type, is the current balance of these tractor beams representative of the game moving forward, or do you have other changes planned? We have plans to balance further. The multi-tool and dedicated tractor beams were always meant to be the least powerful tractor beams in the game to allow puzzle solving, small cargo movement, and cooperative play. Remember at the beginning of this when we were looking at my video and I was like, yeah, the multi-tool's gonna only lift up to 4 SCU. Okay, thank God I'm not designing this game, right? Because they decided to go further than that. But it will only be able to lift 16 SCU boxes. In the future, it'll only be able to lift 8. So I was close. I said 4, and they brought it to 8. With 2, though, you can combine and lift 16. Okay. On-foot dedicated tractor beams. Max of a 32 right now. In the future, it'll be 16, and past that, it'll be 32 when combined. Atlas-wise, 32 right now. In the future, it'll be 32. Honestly, this is basically what I was saying. If you have a ship that's like the size of a Cutlass or a Spirit or anything really like a Mercury Star Runner, anything that is, I would say, your first like three different progressive cargo hauling upgrades. Maybe once you're getting up to something like the Zeus, you'd start wanting to lift like a 16 SCU box. But for the most part, it doesn't even seem like you're going to need a dedicated tractor beam to fill your ship. Granted, you know, it'll work better, it'll be faster. But the Atlas isn't something you're going to probably need for a lot of these smaller ships. It'll be interesting to see how it balances out over time. Right now, It's new. Everybody wants to use one. It feels like it speeds things up very quickly. The design of the game needs to catch up to the fact that they've now added this and they've got to redesign, or not redesign, but they have to edit the way all the tractor beams interact with each other and start to finalize more of like the speeds and weights that they can lift things at. But 2-3 years down the line, it's going to be interesting to see how people choose different equipment for the cargo loading based on what they're doing and what ships they're using. Yeah, I'm going to grab one in game probably, but then again, I don't really load ships that big. I'm a C1 boy. I did recently, if you guys didn't know, I have a gameplay channel. And I did upload some gameplay where, I guess if you're on the stream, you probably saw this. But I'll drop it here. Maybe give a subscribe to the channel. We're going to start uploading more gameplay there shortly. But in that video, we tested out how this thing balances out with somebody who's just using a tractor beam. And I think it works really well when you have somebody outside of an Atlas and somebody in an Atlas working together. I'm feeling like from chat, outside of the way this thing was delivered in terms of pricing and stuff, people sound like they are enjoying the way that cargo is going. And given Chad just confirmed that auto loading will always be available to people no matter what it is they're loading, so they can avoid the idea of manual loading, it sounds like this is becoming the cargo loading that people want to see, at least in chat. I know a lot of people don't. Just some balancing and details that they got to figure out.